Hi, I am Erinvor, and welcome to this first video about the Lord of the Rings. Of course, I'm not an English native speaker, you can easily hear that, I guess, but I'm trying to improve and develop my skills in it. This project is a reflection of what I am already doing in Italian. In my channel, in fact, I am pleased to write and read summaries of each chapter of The Lord of the Rings, surely with my personal eye about the event of the amazing Tolkien saga. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment if you like, and thanks in advance. The Hobbit people have an ancient origin, discreet and modest. More numerous in the past than in the present day, they are peaceful and calm, in love with a well-tilled land. Far from the understanding of machinery more complex than the watermill or the hand loom, they love to live in the isolated, orderly, manicured countryside. A decidedly shy and retiring people, they gladly avoid the high people as they define us. They have keen eyesight and hearing, are agile and quick-witted, and have the art of disappearing quickly and silently, although they tend to be rather lazy and plump. Hobbits are tiny, even though their build is not all that dissimilar to that of humans. They are in fact commensurate with the length of an arm, or an arm and a half. The tallest was Bandobras Took, who came to be as tall as 2 arms. Over time, however, it seems that these small creatures have shrunk even more. This story is about the hobbits of the Shire. A happy-go-lucky and carefree people. They wore bright colors, preferring yellow and green. They rarely wore shoes. Their feet, in fact, are being covered with thick, curly hair and having hard, calloused soles. Their faces were sympathetically jovial, illuminated by lively eyes and colorful cheeks, with a month devoted to laughter, drinking, and, for sure, eating. These, in fact, fully developed their aptitude for jokes, parties, and especially generosity. They deeply loved to give gifts and just as enthusiastically to receive them. For many years the hobbits remained unknown to men and dwarves. Only the elves remembered the earliest time of the dawn, where even men have little place in this history. Those days of the third age of the Middle-earth are long gone, and the configurations of the countries have changed. But the regions where the hobbits lived remained the same. They did not have many chronicles of the era prior to their settlement in the Shire. In fact, their interest in history and erudition in general was very poor. Some ancient legend told of their exodus westward, the tales of the Great March. It seems in fact that the hobbits once resided in the Anduin Valley between the Great Green Forest, now known as the Mirkwood, and the Misty Mountains. It is said that they migrated en masse because of the coming of the man to those areas. Because of that, in fact, it was clear that they learned the main language. The hobbits were divided in 3 races. The Harfoots, darker and shorter, great friends of the dwarves, resident of the underground caves and tunnels. The Sturs, stockier and well-planned, and the Fellowhides, lighter tall and thin, lovers of the forest and the woods. They were considered the most northern hobbits people. They came to the Eriador and mixed with the other two races. However, as they were more adventurous and reckless, they often found themselves in command of the other clans. The great families of the Fellowship, such as the Took and the Lords of Book, distinguished themselves at the time by their strong temperaments. In the west of the Eriador there once lived both men and elves. There were even the last Númenóreans, the kings of the men, who came by the sea from the west in the earlier times. However, those lands were in a pitiful state of abandonment, which encouraged some halflings, as they were called by the High People, to occupy them and thus create the first hobbit communities. The year 1 of the Age of the Shire, 1601 of the Third Age as calendared by the Elves and Númenóreans, was identified by them in relation to their crossing of the Baranduin River, now known as Brandywine, during the days of the Northern Kingdom's splendor, and their settlement in those lands. They claim to have sent archers during the Battle of Fornos to oppose the Witch King of Angmar, although the history of men does not report it. The war, however, marked the defeat of the Northern Kingdom, but allowed the hobbits to take their reins of the country and govern themselves without a king. The Shire's small size, relative lack of importance in terms of geographical position, natural resources, or even concerning hobbits themselves, made it too modest an objective for conquest from the more dominant races of the East and the South. More importantly, the Shire was guarded and protected by the Dunedain Rangers, who patrolled the borders and kept out intruders. However, the limited government of the Shire did hold its own voluntary police force known as sheriffs that helped to keep the Shire safe, usually from trespassing beasts and collecting lost farm animals rather than from enemy forces. The only foreigners to enter the Shire were the dwarves, traveling on the Great East Road that ran through the Shire to and from their mines in the Blue Mountains, and the occasional elves. They lived undisturbed for the next 1,000 years. This largely facilitated their pacifist nature. They farmed their land and lived such a well-ordered and well-organized life, unconcerned with the rest of the world, that they came to believe that peace and prosperity were a normal feature in the Middle-earth. They loved to live in homes called Shmial, or underground caves and tunnels. It must be said, however, that the rich among them had beautiful homes with all the comforts, spacious and decorated. The poorest instead lived in dens extremely more primitive, often without even a window. It was not uncommon, however, for there to be outdoor structures built above ground, whether in Hobbiton, Tuckbarrow, or Michedelving. In fact, there were buildings made of wood, stone, or even brick, where millers and artisans resided, or indeed for workshops and stores. It is believed that the hobbits learned the art of building from both the High Elves and the Númenóreans. Their dwellings, however, were always in the Shmial style. Low, long houses, often covered with thatched roofs, dry grass or moss, which appeared as hillocks. The peculiarity of the main architecture was the circular shape of windows and doors. Hobbits had a strong sense of family, and their houses were often inhabited by several generations of relatives. Bilbo Baggins and Frodo were an obvious exception. Among the various passions, if we may say so, was undoubtedly that of the pipe weed. It is believed that the hobbits did not learn from anyone how to smoke certain leaves, and it is probable that they were among the first people to develop the art of pipe making, and in time became particularly good at it. Famous were the herbs of the South Farthing, such as the long-bottom leaf, Old Toby, and the Southern Star. They jealously guarded their secrets as artisans, and even at the point of death, some never wanted to reveal their cultivation techniques. The Shire is divided into 4 regions, so-called farthings: the South, the North, the East, and the West. None of them have its own political order, although they were divided into a number of seigneuries, each of which was busy attending to its own affairs, especially agricultural work, which occupied almost the entirety of their days. The Took family was for a certain period of time the most powerful one, since they were assigned the title of Thane and the relative duties among which Supreme Judge, President of the National Assembly, and Head of the Sheriffs. Although there were rare occasions where such meetings were necessary, it must be said in fact that the leadership was an honorific title rather than an active institution. The only real official of the Shire was the Mayor of Mickledelving, elected every 7 years. Among the few tasks, there was the presidency of the numerous summer banquets, minister of the post office, and first watch county, or rather the police service, to be precise. The Red Book of Westmarch tells of the extraordinary adventures of Bilbo Baggins, which took place 60 years before the time when our story begins. The facts initially explained by Bilbo were somewhat discordant, especially in relation to how he came into possession of the ring. Many questioned the fairness of the last riddle the Hobbit posed to Gollum inside a cave in the Misty Mountains. "What do I have in my pocket?" was a question that contradicted the rules of the game, but Gollum, having tried to answer anyway, had accepted the condition of the challenge, so nothing could be recriminated against Bilbo. In fact, they all agreed that Gollum was irrevocably bound to fulfill his promise. So it was that Gollum sought solace in this talisman, in this precious. But the ring was gone, so it was that he let out a shout that made Bilbo's hair stand on end. That's what he had in his pocket. Gollum rushed to slay the hobbit and take back his gift from many years ago, but Bilbo, who put his hands in his pockets to put on the ring, had become invisible. So much so that Gollum did not notice him. He assumed that he had made his way to exit of the mountain through the narrow passages and set off in pursuit, effectively showing Bilbo the desired exit. But Bilbo found himself facing Gollum, invisible and with his sword drawn. But it was the compassion that kept him from killing the frightened creature at a disadvantage. He thus leaped above his adversary, whose cries echoed filled with hatred and despair. "To the thief! To the thief! Begging, be cursed forever!" At his companions, Bilbo reported that Gollum had promised just a gift if he won the riddle game. Gandalf was never convinced by Bilbo's first version, which was considered strange and ambiguous, and he was always intrigued by the story of the magic ring. The wizard in fact wanted to know the exact version of the facts, which created several tensions between them.